guaranteed to be less controversial than The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. Welcome to Dre TV.
Welcome to you all at home.
You've still got a chance to win this race, haven't you?
Just drive. I wanna be the only one to make it through the
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 5 of Dre TV. Pardon the shaky webcam for a second there as I flipped my laptop case stand a little bit. But welcome to episode 5 of Dre TV, the motorsport coverage show, you could say, featuring all the latest and greatest from Formula 1 and MotoGP. Every week here on the Harrison 101 channel. It's an all Formula 1 episode this week. I'll be talking more about MotoGP and the Circuit of the Americas on next week's show. In the meantime, we're going to be talking about the Bahrain Grand Prix this past weekend and why it was one of the best races we've seen in Formula 1 for a long, long time. I'm talking about Mercedes pulling off the 1-2, Force India's best weekend ever, why the Red Bulls were slipping a little bit, as well as the power rankings, and 2 special extra segments on Formula 1 this week, talking about John-Eric Verne's hospitalisation and the concerns over minimum weight limits in Formula 1 at the moment and what the drivers are having to do to themselves in order to make these limits, as well as the quite under-the-radar news of the spending cap in Formula 1 currently being scrapped for 2015 and what I think of the situation and why I think it's a pretty bad call and why it's very sad that this spending cap rule is going, as well as an update on the Castrol Race Predictor League and another Ask Dre segment. So I hope you guys enjoy the show, and to kick us off, we'll start with the Bahrain Grand Prix race review and power rankings. As the lights went up in Bahrain for the first time, it was the other Mercedes driver, Nico Rosberg, on pole after Lewis Hamilton made a mistake on his final qualifying lap. Valtteri Bottas matched his best ever qualifying result in 3rd, with Sergio Perez of Force India in 4th after Daniel Ricciardo's 10th-place grid drop kicked in. Both Mercedes drivers finishing 0.8 of a second in qualifying ahead of the nearest man. Off the line for Formula 1's 900th Grand Prix, and Lewis Hamilton had nailed the start, lined up alongside Nico, and by turn 4 was in the lead. The two Mercs, like before, had shot off into the distance, Lewis narrowly inching up ahead of Rosberg by just over a second. Nico was thinking up of an alternative strategy, but towards the end of the first stint, he came back again, and the two had a terrific scrap. Hamilton narrowly coming into the pits ahead of Nico, with Hamilton taking up the option tyres, while Nico doing his prime stint earlier on. As Hamilton was building up a 10-second lead over his teammate on their second stints, there was scraps all over the field for the final podium spot. The two Force Indias came to blows, with Sergio Perez putting off an incredible pass on teammate Nico Hülkenberg, which took out his rage, I should say, on his race engineer. The race took a dramatic turn in the latter stages as Pastor Maldonado done goofed out of the pits and hit Esteban Gutierrez in such a spectacular fashion that he actually flipped his car over, causing a safety car and Pastor getting a stop-go penalty, a 5th-place grid drop for China, and 3 penalty points on his licence. As much as the safety car eradicated Mercedes' lead, they were 2 seconds a lap faster on the restart, Hamilton finishing 24 seconds ahead of Sergio Perez, despite some incredible defensive driving to keep Nico at bay right up to the finish line. There was drama in Red Bull's camp too. Sebastian Vettel let his teammate past. Take that, internet! Seb's RB10 wasn't quite on the same level as Ricciardo's on the day, with the Aussie having the race of his life to finish 4th from 13th on the grid. He was 1 corner shy of a podium from Perez, with Danny putting off some sensational passes and showing some incredible pace, especially after the safety car pulled in, taking half a second a lap out of Sergio until the finish. Further back, Williams drivers Valtteri Bottas and Felipe Massa were in the mix, having scraps of their own, but fell to 7th and 8th after having to run 3-stop strategies. Don't worry, Felipe wasn't told to move over this time. It was bad news, however, for McLaren as both of their cars failed to finish due to clutch failures. Jenson Button just 2 laps from the end, a sombre finish to his 250th Grand Prix. A shame as both cars weren't particularly fast, but were on track to still score points. This bumped up the very slow Ferraris of Fernando Alonso and Kimi Raikkonen up into 9th and 10th respectively, Alonso admitting post-race it was the best they could manage. But in the end, Mercedes were in a race of their own once again, Lewis Hamilton scoring his 24th career victory, with his first back-to-back race win since the 2010 Canadian Grand Prix. Lewis said it was the toughest win of his career, and Rosberg celebrated his 150th Grand Prix in second, saying it was the best fight he's had in his F1 career to date. Either way, they had put on an incredible show. Sergio Perez's third was just Force India's second ever podium, the last one being Giancarlo Fisichella's back at the 2009 Grand Prix of Belgium. While it wasn't his finest hour, it was another impressive drive for Nico Hülkenberg, who finished in 5th, completing Force India's greatest ever weekend with 25 points scored in total. This put Force India an incredible 2nd place in the Constructors' Championship, a point ahead of McLaren, as well as Nico Hülkenberg being 3rd in the Drivers' Championship with 28 points. So what did I make of Bahrain? It was freaking awesome. This is exactly what the fat cat owners of Formula 1 needed after 2 very mediocre races in Australia and Malaysia. This race had everything a Formula 1 fan would want or need. A battle for the lead, a battle for the podium, drivers showing vulnerability, some incredible passes by many of the drivers in the points, like Ricciardo, Vettel, Perez, etc., and some brilliant defensive driving too from Hamilton. A mix of strategies and a rare Bahrain safety car to shake things up, as well as Daniel Ricciardo flying through the field at the end. In my opinion, Bahrain 2014 was the best GP I've seen since Valencia 2012. It had everything, and this race review cannot and will not do it justice. It's a 9 out of 10 from me, and it's a race you absolutely have to see. Given modern Formula 1 these days, it'll be hard to top it for Race of the Year. Go watch it immediately. Well, after the power rankings, of course. Not too many changes in the power rankings this time around, but the big one this week was Force India getting a huge lift from 6th to 3rd. After their best weekend ever, it's only fair they get bumped up here. Sergio Perez with his best drive since he was still at Sauber, and Hülkenberg following along nicely. It's becoming clear that everything has finally come together for the second best team on Mercedes power. This knocks McLaren down to 4th for their double DNF for the weekend, and the biggest droppers of the weekend are Ferrari from 4th to 6th. I now have serious question marks when it comes to the direction of the team at this point. They were 2nd on my list before Australia and have slowly slipped down every race since then. Fernando Alonso is driving his heart out, but the car just isn't beneath him, even more so than previous years. And Kimi Raikkonen's looked very average since the season has started from a driver of his reputation and calibre. More on that on next week's show. Top of the pile remains Mercedes yet again. They're just that damn good, and no one has finished the race even close. Did you know that Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso are the only 2 guys that have finished within 20 seconds of either Merc so far this season? This is the advantage they have when the consensus pound for pound number 2 and number 1 drivers in Formula 1 aren't even close. Here's the full list. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Got any thoughts on Bahrain? What did you think of the power rankings? Have you got a question for Ask Dre later in the show? Put it in the comments below. I can tell you in advance right now, Ask Dre will probably be a little bit longer next week. I'm calling it the All Questions Considered episode of Dre TV, where I will answer your questions for about 15 minutes of the episode next week. So, if you have a question that's Formula 1 or MotoGP related, put it in the comments, tag it with the hashtag AskDre, and there's a much stronger chance you'll get in next week's episode if it comes to a Q&A. Right, next up, let's talk about our segment about weight loss, John-Eric Verne's hospitalisation, Lewis Hamilton losing weight during the Malaysian Grand Prix, and all of that stuff, and why Jordan Tot denying the existence of a diet and possible issues regarding not driving with water bottles on board may be a bad thing. An interesting new development that not many people have talked about so far this season has been the effects of the FIA raising the minimum weight limit of the cars and drivers this season to 692 kilograms. It doesn't sound like much on the face of it, but it's wreaked havoc with the drivers and what they've had to go through this season. Now, don't get me wrong, you already have to be incredibly fit to drive a Formula 1 car for 100 minutes at a time, often at 30 to 40 degree heat, in a tight cockpit and racing suit, but now it's gotten to a near dangerous breaking point. I first raised an eyebrow to this when I saw Nico Rosberg on the podium at Malaysia, looking like he was about to collapse. In my eyes at least, he did not look well at all. Then Lewis Hamilton revealed that he lost 4 pounds of water weight during the Grand Prix. That's nearly 2 kilos in the metric system. More evidence of this sort of thing? Adrian Sutil, who just so happened to be one of the biggest drivers on the grid, revealed how he raced in Bahrain without a water bottle, taking every possible measure to keep his weight as low as possible. Jean-Eric Vergne revealed last week that he had been hospitalised after the Australian Grand Prix due to extreme dehydration, and he was forced on a diet to keep his weight down, which often can sap strength. I clocked on to stuff like this a little sooner than most. For being the sports fan that I am, being a fan of sports like mixed martial arts, boxing, jiu-jitsu and collegiate wrestling, all sports where it's commonplace to cut large amounts of weight in order to compete and fight at a competition level. For example, it's commonplace for a mixed martial artist to cut 20 to 40 pounds to make weight 24 hours before they fight, before rehydrating their bodies and eating in bulk quickly in order to get back to their walking weight before they actually fight. What many people fail to realise is that this action and obvious dehydration is extremely dangerous and not ideal for anyone involved. Formula 1 doctor Gary Hartstein said on Twitter last week that if Jean-Eric Vergne was indeed in hospital for dehydration, then something needs to be done. I needn't point out that current medical leadership in Formula 1 has little to no credibility with drivers. Knee-jerk responses to be avoided, but priority is to preserve health and safety. And he's absolutely right. What makes this even scarier was that Jean Tot's flat-out denial of the problem. In a recent interview with The Telegraph, Jean was quoted to have said, "Honestly, I don't know why a driver. I think normally you can do a good diet and not have to go to hospital because you have been losing some kilos. But with the minimum limit up, and with teams maximising their own competitiveness by taking every advantage they can get to as close as that weight limit as possible, drivers have to take such extremes in order to make this work. And as a result, it could set a dangerous precedent in the future that could easily be avoided." Jean-Eric Vergne is calling for the minimum weight limit to be raised, and I agree with him. Ultimately, we want to see their drivers at their best, and health and safety should be the #1 concern. Having drivers being forced into measures such as no water or extreme dieting doesn't meet either of those criteria, and we need to stop it now before it gets out of hand. What do you think of the situation? Is Jean-Eric Vergne right? Do you agree with Jean Tot? Let me know in the comments. Again, if you have any thoughts on the weight loss concerns and things like that, the comment section is your friend. Absolutely go for it. I'd love to hear your opinion on that as always. Next up, a quick update on the Dre TV Predictor League, and it's an interesting situation we got going on right here. Joe McMillan still in the lead with 239 points. He has a 27-point lead. He scored 65 points in Bahrain to maintain the gap. We have a newcomer, Chris Halliwell, with 212 points in second place for Ampwell Racing there. Arab been knocked down to third. But the big surprise, a 50-position increase for Anthony Sava. We may know him as ATB. As part of the F1 community. He scored a whopping 135 points during the Bahrain Grand Prix. He got Hamilton, Rosberg, Massa, Bottas, Alonso and Raikkonen exactly right. And as part of the rules in this league, if you correctly predict 6 out of the 10 runners in the exact same position, you get a bonus 60 points. So the game's basically rewarding you for being accurate. So you got 6 exact runners out of the 10, giving them a 60-point bonus, giving a grand total of 135, which I think is the most anybody has scored in a single week so far. Bad news for me, I don't think I'm even the highest scoring Harrison anymore. I'm down in 26th place. Shout out to Harrison Whitworth, who is 1 point ahead of me in my own league. I'm not even the highest ranked Harrison. That's how far down the order I've now fallen. But remember, the top 3 at the end of the season will win Harrison 101 t-shirts, and the overall winner will receive a copy of F1 2014 on the platform of their choice. Right, let's do Ask Dre. Okay, time for Ask Dre, the segment where I ask the F1 community and people on the internet to ask me your questions, and you have a chance of getting on the show where I answer them live on air. Right, let's get to it. It was mainly all Facebook comments this time around. I got very few tweets on this one. Must have been a slow week on the Twitterverse. But, right, so my Facebook page, which you can follow at Harrison101. Actually, it's facebook.com/Harrison101HD. The link is in the description. Okay, first question is from Ashley Webb, and he asks, do you think Ferrari can turn around their poor start to the season to get in a shot at one of the titles? If recent history is to be believed, then no. Is the honest answer to that. I don't know what it is with Ferrari, but they always seem to be playing catch-up. Ferrari are this team which often struggles to hit the ground running. Like, I think Fernando Alonso has been a bit of a mask to how bad those Ferrari cars have been over the last few years. I mean, I think the cars have been pretty bad, but I think Alonso has been so good as a driver that they've kind of got away with it for a long time. And I think now that Alonso's skill set is starting to erode a little bit, he's really seeming to be struggling now. This Ferrari car just isn't where they want it to be right now, and Bahrain was the prime example of that. I mean, 9th and 10th for Ferrari is poor, and it wasn't like that they were screwed by anything or there was anything that hurt their race. They were just legitimately slow, which is a bit of a surprise for Ferrari. And by the time they catch up, they often leave it too late. Development-wise, they're often behind everybody else. So I think it's unlikely that Ferrari are able to bounce back from this anytime soon. It's a shame, really, because it would be nice to see Ferrari doing well. But, you know, I'd like to see it more often. I'd like to see Ferrari do well, but they just seem to be really struggling right now. Okay, question from Owen Quemby. You may know him on YouTube as OwenTQ128, the internet's Valtteri Bottas fan, and if you Danica Patrick admirer. He asks, do you believe Mercedes dominance could get as boring as Vettel dominance for a casual fan? Good question. I'm not sure on that one, to be honest. There's a lot of Lewis Hamilton fans out there. The internet is rife with them. I've said it for a long time. I think Lewis Hamilton is the most popular driver in the paddock. Maybe Fernando Alonso. It's between those two, but I think those two are the most popular drivers in Formula One, especially considering it's a sport with a lot of British fans. It's very much a European heavy followed sport, so they're going to love Hamilton. I don't think it'll be boring at first. Mainly because it's Hamilton, they'll turn a blind eye to it. And there's a good chance that Hamilton runs away with this season, because the two races we've seen where he's actually had a working car, he's had the better of Nico Rosberg. And, you know, Malaysia, he crushed Rosberg, which was a bit of a concern. In Bahrain, it was a lot closer, luckily. And that's the one thing that's going for Hamilton in this situation, and Mercedes, that isn't going to be the same as when Red Bull were dominating. Mercedes are actually going to let their drivers race, which is a good thing. You know, for casual fans, that's great news, because that means that they'll get a fight more often than not. If Rosberg's up to scratch, if he isn't, then Hamilton's going to run away with the season. It's going to be even more boring than when Vettel was dominating the second half of last season. So if there's one thing that's going for it in Mercedes' situation is that they have both cars being competitive, and you know, it's a bit like a Senna-Prost in '88 situation where these two run away with it and it'll be a two-way fight for the title, maybe. The thing is, though, is that Nico Rosberg is no Adam Prost, and that's the issue with the situation. So who knows? I'd hope that Rosberg can give Hamilton a good fight. If not, it's going to be a complete walkover this season. It's going to be even worse than last year. But then again, last year didn't have a race like Bahrain. So it depends how you want to look at it, really. Okay, let's go with... Oh, so because I've got to give a shout out to Nathan Green. Nathan Green asked a quite similar question, where he said, how are all the casual fans of F1 going to cope this season with Red Bull down a well as Ferrari and Mercedes streaking ahead? It seems more and more like Vettel's last off of last season. Very similar question, really. So I want to give a shout out to Nathan as well, because he came up with that kind of thing. Blake Palmer asks, do you think the Red Bull can keep up with Mercedes' great form due to the new rules? Maybe. If history is anything to go by, then there's a possibility. The last time I saw a car this visibly ahead of everybody else on the rules was Brawn GP in 2009, when it was Jenson Button and Rubens Barrichello in the team. And the first, I think it was 7 races, Jenson Button won the first 6 of the 7, and Brawn GP was ridiculously fast, it was double diffuser. Then when the rest of the field caught up, Brawn GP didn't win a Grand Prix the rest of the season. And that was when the rise of Red Bull started to happen. So, Newey's done it once before. He's been able to adapt to a new set of technical regulations very quickly. This time, it's almost out of his hands because Red Bull have an amazing chassis, but the issue is Renault's engines. They're about 80 brake horsepower down on what Mercedes are producing right now. On high-speed tracks like Bahrain, it's really hurting them, like to the point where it's nearly a second a lap. So if Newey can make something work, if Renault can I think the Renault is the bigger factor, whether or not Red Bull can catch up or not. The paddock generally seems to think that Red Bull has the best car, but Mercedes have the best engine. And the trade-off between engines is much bigger than the trade-off between chassis at the moment. So, unfortunately, that seems to be putting Red Bull slightly further back than when they really want to be. It all comes down to whether Renault can keep up. But Helmut Marko has already teased that if Renault is still playing catch-up by the middle of the season, they'll consider changing engine suppliers. Red Bull with Mercedes power would be very interesting indeed. Let's have a look here. I've got a couple more I think I want to get out. Joseph, JJ Willow is asking, what do you think of US team Haas Racing joining the grid in 2015? I don't know anything about the Ferrari junior team, to be honest with you. I haven't read into it very much, but it's good to see more teams in the sport, and it's nice to have an American team in Formula 1 again, because America does have a heavy influence in Formula 1, and more teams means more jobs, and more jobs mean more money, which is a good thing. It's good for the sport, and I hope Haas can stick around for a while. It'll be interesting to see what engines they choose to supply, what engines they choose to run on, and who their drivers are going to be. Maybe Kurt Busch gets a Formula 1 drive, which would be interesting. But it's good news. I'm sure it's pretty exciting for American Formula 1 fans as well, that they're getting an American team, something they can really root behind, which is good. And I really do like the fact that we're getting more of an American influence in the sport. And one more question, and it's going to go to Aaron Davidson, who says, if Red Bull were to leave the sport, which team would you support? Tough question. Red Bull have been my first love since about 2005, 2006. Because they're just down the road, Milton Keynes just down the road from me, so it's not a million miles away at all. If I had to pick a team to support, if it wasn't them, I would probably go for probably Lotus. Maybe not Lotus actually. Probably Ferrari. Ferrari I've always admired. I love their road cars. The thing is, though, about supporting Ferrari, it's kind of a chavvy brand. Like, how many people have you seen wearing Ferrari jackets and Ferrari caps just because it looks nice? This is why I like being a Red Bull fan, because their gear is quite good, actually. Mercedes as well. Mercedes are... The thing is, a lot of people give Mercedes a bad rap, but Mercedes are actually a very likeable team. They have a very good Twitter page. One of the best ones on Twitter, actually, for fan interaction. Mercedes are very cool. They've got a good sense of humour. Unlike Lotus, which is... I think Lotus just try too hard to please everybody now. And their Twitter operators are a bit stupid sometimes. But I like Mercedes a lot. Mercedes are a good bunch of guys. Rosberg I've always admired. Hamilton's been pretty good this season, to be honest. And a lot of people seem to think I hate Hamilton. I don't. I just don't like how sky up his anus, pretty much. But I'll save that for next week's show. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably go for Ferrari. Because I've always admired Ferrari and I love their road cars. But I must admit, it is a bit of a chavvy brand to support. Thanks everybody for your questions on Ask Dre this week. Hope you guys appreciated that. If you've got a question, remember, don't forget to tag it Ask Dre in the comments or on Twitter, or just put it on my Facebook wall. On all the links you need are in the description. And to wrap up the show this week, let's talk a little bit about the spending cap, why it's been scrapped, and why I don't seem to like the idea very much. Another story that kind of went under the radar recently was the news that Jean Todt has given up on the scheme of getting a spending cap in for the 2015 season. A cap that would essentially limit how much a team could spend over the course of a season, in an attempt to bring the field closer together in terms of development. However, Jean Todt panicked and scrapped the idea as the top teams went to the FIA and said a new scheme would be impossible to police, or as I like to call it, we don't want to give the FIA our balance sheets to look at. To put the excessive spending into Formula 1 into perspective, in the 2011 season, Red Bull Racing spent £177 million, but that entity only has about 52 people employed for it. Red Bull Technology, which has a further 500 people working for them, many of which Red Bull's own design team, increased the outfit's total spend to £211 million that season. And with new technology coming into the sport this year, those numbers are only going to get even higher. The biggest issue of excessive spending in Formula 1 goes hand in hand with the FIA's revenue sharing. The FIA distributes their money with the top team getting the most on a sliding scheme. The lower you finish, the less money you get. Last season, 11th place Caterham got absolutely nothing from the FIA for an entire season. This scheme makes it incredibly difficult for smaller teams like Sauber, Marussia and Caterham to even survive, let alone remain competitive in a sport that is excessively top-heavy for a long time. As a result, these smaller teams struggle to generate revenue or have the funds to develop the cars to get better. And it's not like sponsors are going to come flocking to a team that's constantly at the back. It's a vicious cycle that's incredibly hard to break. How, when you're a team like Caterham with a budget of 60 million, can compete with a team like Red Bull or Ferrari that have practically limitless funding available to them? Remember, Red Bull effectively run 2 teams in Formula 1 at present. Compare that to other major sports like the National Football League, where the league's revenue is split equally amongst all 32 of its franchises, and every team is given an equal chance of winning by giving the weaker teams stronger draft picks to balance the field out. This is why I was praying for the spending cap to be a thing, because choking the top teams financially could give the chance for the smaller teams to lessen the gap and compete, and if they can be up there consistently, be able to establish themselves in the sport. Financial stability is definitely a good thing. Do you really want to see more teams forced to drop out of the sport and for less jobs to go around? Of course not. But what do you guys make of it? Of course, the comment section is your friend, so feel free to comment below. And there we have it for this week's Dre TV. I've been Harrison101. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Leave a like, comment below with anything you wanted to hear about the show or an Ask Dre question, and I'll catch you guys next time. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to subscribe. It really does help me out. I'm much appreciated, of course, and thanks as always for watching. Until next time, sayonara.